Good morning to all of you. My name is Hansel. I am from Gujarat, Anand. I, as sir told that, share one experience. So, before 3 to 4 years, I was working in Cafe Cooperative. You must be knowing one of the famous chain companies. So, it was a closing time, and I was just cleaning the tables and floor. And suddenly, an accident happened. So, one boy was on the bike, and he was totally half dead. So, and 50 to 100 people were around him, but nobody wanted to touch him, couldn't touch him. So, I was thinking, and I saw that something happened. I could not find that what happened outside because the glass was cold. So, I went outside. I saw that one boy is half dead, and 50 to 100 people were around him, but nobody wanted to touch him. So, I went there. And at that time there was no service like 108. So I hired a rickshaw for him. I went with him, and he was totally survived. I called his brother, and this is just I am telling everybody was talking about collaborative efforts, but what I wanted to tell you is that the right thing is to do it is now.
Fantastic.
The right person, the right person for you is with whom you are talking. Okay. And one more thing, I am also one of the member of St. Francis Parachute, which is in Anand, and we are also doing some activities. Of course, I am an alumni of St. Davis High School Anand, but we are also, there is one non-profit organization, St. Francis Parachute. We have been organizing some activities like blood donation camp, like educational awareness program, environmental awareness program. We have also donated 15 to 2,100 plants to so many people and so many NGOs also. So this is what I want.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just wanted to, and these are just 5. There's more. So let's do it. This is beautiful. This is exactly what happens. All these mental images we have about social media, Twitter. This is Twitter in real life. Someone just has to make it 140 characters and put it on the net. That's a good issue.
Well, it all started off pretty involuntarily. There was a father of a friend of mine who was in state. It was, please help me out with this thing. I don't know whether to trust this thing, transacting money online. It started off with a small initiative, and then I ended up 3 or 4 of us helping out this friend, friend's friend. Today I think that 7 or 10 of us, we are not an organized group. It's more of a word-to-mouth thing. But now this community is getting, it's a virtual community. We're not serving any local community. But we are advising people. But we've got at least we got 3 emails which are like, Uncle, the peddler. We just send it across, and it talks about how to save your passwords, how not to share things with them. It's pretty simple stuff basically. But then what we found is that a group of us trying to make money out of it also now, we want to monetize it. But the point is that if at all you're able to get things on IT, I think that's another revolution that we're looking at. I'm not for cleaning the streets, I don't know.
That's a great story, and in fact I think let me just share my own mother who keeps seeing us working on our laptops and so on. There was a huge digital divide. Until our son, who's 15 years old, actually went to set her up with all the network and everything else, and now you can't take the computer away from her.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that there's a real issue which is, and this can be taken up by alumni association, which is helping older people, helping those who are not digitally empowered to connect. And if you're doing a business on the side, that's fine, but you can do it through a social platform like the alumni network and do other things. That's wonderful. Thank you. Can we have one last experience share?
I am Ramesh from Vincent's Pune. I was just thinking of a number of activities which I was involved in, but the ones that I want to mention is the cable network. In our locality, where I used to stay just near the school, the cable charges were just going up by leaps and bounds, and we had the neighbors, our known parishioners and people we have grown up with, getting very upset that the charges are going up 100, 175, 200, 250, 300, and the man was telling us there will be a time when you have to pay 500. A lot of opposition, but nobody organized to confront, I won't say mafia, but the cable network operators. I got involved along with some others from my locality, and it became quite a movement. We found people coming not only from our 2-3 streets, but we found people coming from other places far off, 4-5 kilometers away, and enough pressure was brought to bear upon the cable network that was involved in Pune that time. One particular ICC, very famous in Pune because he has the majority of the connections in Pune. But because of that effort, not mine, I want to tell you something about that, not my effort, the Dish TV made a massive dent in Pune. Z was the first that came in, Tata's came in later, and ICC lost a lot of its custom. Today I don't have the dish at home, reasons of my own. I didn't have it, I didn't have the cable either when I took up this movement along with friends of mine. But the issue was that today I find with my neighbors that the rate is still at 320, Pune. Am I right? Pune? It was warned by that man in charge of ICC that it would be 500. But what I want to mention among other projects that I have done, I have always found the idea may emanate from somebody's mind. It wasn't mine, it was somebody else's. They tagged on to me and a couple of other people. If it wasn't for the involvement of others together, we wouldn't have had success.
Wonderful.
Networking without the involvement of others,
thank you,
we would not have had success.
That's a lovely story. In fact, I'd like to close this by making a few observations, because I know you have a program and you have an agenda to move ahead with. Each of us sitting here is making, we're all brilliant people. We're all making mental choices right now. What is this fellow about? What's his agenda? Why is he saying this? Is this worth it? When is this meeting going to end? Shall we go home? I'm feeling hungry. 100 different things in our heads. My request to you is, out of those 100 things, if we can channelize at least one idea, one point which says, let's set aside some time to do something, either individually or through a group, either something I lead or something I support. It doesn't have to be physically on the ground, it can be something to do with IT, it could be anything. We all care about something. We cannot transform our society unless we take the responsibility. So, I'd like to end by saying thank you for having me here. What I am is because of the Jesuit system, so this is an opportunity for me in a small way to give back. Congratulations to all of you. May something wonderful come out of this program, and more strength to your elbows going ahead. Thank you.
I think we can do better than that. That was an inspiring talk, and I love the way you just threw it open to everybody in the audience. Thank you very much for being here with us. We have time for probably 1 or 2 questions for Mr. Ramanathan. I think somebody earlier was wanting to ask a question. Yeah. So we'll just take maybe 2 or 3 questions maximum, and then we'll carry on. So do we have the mic? And if you can get this microphone on as well. So yeah.
By Tata Tea, unfortunately, it was a great campaign. However, every general election we see the percentage, in the 40s, 50s, and in the neighborhood which we all live in, Danda especially, the urban poor, they come out and vote. However, those who are from the middle class or upper middle class, they do not come. So how do we encourage voters to come out and vote during election day? Could you highlight, please?
So let me, it will take me 2 or 3 minutes. Sure. Let me give you a little bit of background. I don't know how many of you saw the first Tata Tea Jagore ad. There was a politician going for elections, and then there was a young man, he stopped at his house, and then this young man asks him, sir, aapka qualification kya hai? So that man says, kya mera interview le rahe ho kya? He says, of course sir, itne bade post ke liye aaye hain, to interview to lena hi padega. You remember that ad? Yeah. Now, that was all that Tata Tea had done. Prior to that ad came out in 2007-8. Prior to that ad, in 2004, when the same UPA election happened, we felt, because the same story would happen in Bangalore also, 40% urban apathy, middle class doesn't care. But we said something is wrong with this, because all the middle class that we are reaching out to, all the middle class poor, everybody cares. So why is it that the turnout is not happening as much? So we went to one constituency and did a sample, very random sample. The list was extremely high. So after the elections, we went to the election commission. That time Mr. Krishnamurthy was the chief election commissioner and said, sir, we need to study this, because so far all the elections are rural India. Now we're getting urbanized. Maybe there's something we need to know better. So he immediately agreed, and that's the beauty of the Election Commission, they're very open-minded. We did a systematic study in one assembly constituency in Bangalore, across 2 lakh voters. Door to door, we did a GIS mapping of every house and so on. You know what we discovered? 75% is the error rate. Out of 1,000 names, so you imagine Bombay, don't think of India as 28 states, union territories, don't. Think of it in your mind as 6 lakh pieces. 6 lakh pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Each piece is a polling booth, is a part. That's got 1,000 names, 1,000 to 1,500. The moment it gets bigger, the Election Commission will split it. So Bangalore has got 5,000 such parts. Bombay has about 8,000 such parts. Every election, depending on whether it's an assembly election or a parliamentary election or so, the parts come together in different groups. So a municipal election which you had is about 30 parts. An assembly election is about 200 parts. The parliamentary election is about 1,500 parts. So if you want to know the error, you just have to start at the part, because it's the same everywhere. So 75%, why is that? Is it because of bad people or a bad system? So as we probed it, we realized it's a bad system. Because how does the Election Commission manage the voter list? It is meant for rural India. Once a year, the Tehsildar would go, land up in the village and say, Ara Gangubai hai, Ramu Sharma hai, yes or no, hardly any change would happen. Now you take that system and put it in urban India, where hundreds of thousands of people are coming into the city and moving around, that year on year, the changes are too much. And who is managing this? There is no Election Commission. There is only teachers, revenue inspectors, health officers who have various other pressures. So once a year, and we've seen 10% is the change every year. That's the flow in urban India. In 200,000 voters, that means every year 20,000 names have to be deleted and another 20,000 have to be added. 40,000. All this we knew before the Tata Tea campaign. When we went to the Election Commission, they said, we agree that there's something wrong, but we can't focus on all this, we have many other challenges. So we said the only way to get pressure on the system is by getting demand. Now when we saw the Tata Tea ad, at that time the chief operating officer of Tata Tea was a person called Harish Bhatt, who was 2 years senior to me in college. So I called him up. I said, Harish, fantastic ad, congratulations. But imagine if that politician turned around and asked that youngster, Acha, maze uda, you're doing all this great fun at my expense. What are you doing? I said, what if we could give you a solution for that question? What if we could make it into the next version of your campaign? And he said, what? We get the youth to register to vote. So he said, great idea. I said, it's a great campaign for Tata Tea also. So the second campaign came out in the 2009 elections. I don't know how many of you saw that. Youngsters standing near a movie theatre saying, "Aap sab so rahe hain." Sab so rahe hain. So election, then this lady says that one girl says, "Kya I am awake, I am not sleeping." He says, election के दिन अगर आप वोट नहीं कर रहे हो, तो आप सो रहे हो. जाओ रे, जाओ रे, जाओ रे, जाओ रे. That was the back end of that, was to come to a website and register. We managed the entire back end. We tied up with the Election Commission. That campaign resulted in 6 lakh youth across India registering to vote for the first time.
Wow.
But there were 12 lakh youth who could not register because the system was broken, which we knew would happen. So 2010, this is how long it takes for change, by the way. 8 years back we started this. In 2010, the Election Commission signed an MOU with Janaagraha to fix the system in one constituency. Day before yesterday in Bangalore, they extended the MOU by 3 years and they have agreed that they are going to create a manual called PURE, Proper Urban Electoral Rolls. We fixed it in one constituency already. We added 25,000 names. We deleted 60,000 names. We modified 13,000 names. All done through 20 staff and 400 community volunteers called Area Voter Mitras. Our promise to the Election Commission is, in that constituency, next parliamentary elections, turnout will be 20% higher. The answer is not about apathy. It's about how the voter list is managed.
Great insight there. Another question from the gentleman there. Do we have the mic?
Ramanathan, I've read a lot about you and I'm so glad to meet you today because I've been following you in the magazine, news articles, newspapers, and this is a wonderful opportunity. I'd like to highlight something that really happened. This election, I had my mother, who's about 75, going through about 4 or 5 booths, trying to get to verify whether her name was there for that election, for that booth. And she couldn't find a name, and then she came back saying, I'm not going to vote. And then I felt something is wrong. And I had gone to the whatever correction had to be done about 3 years back, and I told them that there's an error. Our name is not showing in our area, but showing in another area. So can you correct it? So they said yes. So I said no, nothing doing. She has to vote. So I went around searching different places, and I managed to find my name, her name, and my wife's name. And I took all 3 of them, and I went and I voted after say an hour of searching. And I made sure that I got her to vote, and that was a beautiful thing that happened.
What is your question? What is your
My
question?
question, sir, is, as you said, this thing that you have done in Bangalore, can this be done all over Bombay so that we can correct this error that is happening, and we are addressing it, but they are not correcting it?
The answer to that, the short answer is yes.
I'd like to say thank you and a nice round of applause for Mr. Ramanathan for being with us here this morning. May I now
really is to highlight really what Mr. Ramanathan did for us. In this college, I'd like to begin something which we do in this college. We have a thing called the Social Involvement Program, where every student has to put in 60 hours by the end of their academic career working with an NGO somewhere in Bombay City. And we Jesuits think that this comes from our Christian heritage, it comes from our Ignatian heritage of reaching out to those who are not yet, who are on the margins of society. But a small percentage of our students, not all, I'm saying a small percentage of our students, get quite resentful, and they say, Father, we've come to your college because it's a great academic institution, and we don't want to be converted into Jholawala social workers. And I think today, Mr. Ramanathan has provided, in a way, a bridge for me to tie up these two ends. If I think that our work is really just Christian and reaching out to the marginalized and the poor, and if these few minority students think they're just, becoming, unfortunately, Jholawala social workers, what Mr. Ramanathan has done really is to point out that involvement in our neighborhoods, involvement in our nation, involvement in our global cosmos is not really something that is purely, Jholawala activism. It's actually democracy at work. And I think that's something that we need to constantly emphasize with our students, that in reaching out to somebody on the margins, you're not doing him a favor. You're actually improving democracy, because if everyone, as Gandhi reminded us, if everyone at the margins of society is as well off as me, then we have a perfect nation, we have a perfect world. And that is democracy. The other thing that I'd like to highlight about today's speaker is, that we sometimes think, and again, this comes from my interaction with students, they will always tell me, Father, what is the use of all this, The world is going to be, was bad 10 years ago, it was bad 100 years ago, and 100 years later, it's going to be the same. So what if our little efforts, they're going to do nothing to change this world? And I think what Ramanathan pointed out is that each one of us in our heads has a dream. Not just one dream, actually, we have multiple ideas floating around in our heads. And those multiple ideas we can always choose one of them, and we can enact one of them in real life. And when those dreams become a reality, even that little bit that we do goes a long way. And I think this talk would have just remained a lovely idealistic talk if he had stopped at that point. But what he did for us was something wonderful. He began to ask each one of us here, what have you done? And that, I think, was really the impact of the talk, that finally there were not just 5, actually there were many more who were slowly raising their hands. And that's, something that is great, because he showed us then that this democracy at work can actually be done by each one of us. It's not something out there that is so difficult. It's not something that the politician needs to do. It's not something that the Jholawala activist needs to do. It's that every citizen of this world can do and should do. And being a Jesuit, I'd like to come back to our own Jesuit heritage. I think that's what the Marges is about. I think all of you at some point will have heard the word Marges. And we sometimes misinterpret this Marges as, something that can only be done by great people like Ignatius, Xavier, or Gandhi, as if, the Marges would mean something that is an impossible task for each one of us. But I think this is what Marges means in essence. taking the hundreds of ideas that float around in our minds, choosing, zeroing down on one of them, and going after that no matter what. That is the Majas. In other words, it's the ability to commit ourselves to an idea and to go after that idea and not to worry what happens to that idea. As somebody pointed out, other people may take up our role, and that's fine. So good, I'd like to end on this note. Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan, for really, inspiring each one of us here, and I hope we will live up to this ideal. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Arun. May I invite Mr. John Neelankaval, the West Zone representative of JAI, to make the vote of thanks for this session.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, ones on the guest audience here, and all of you dear friends who've come in. My privilege to propose a vote of thanks to our keynote speaker, Mr. Ramesh Ramanathan. When we first started looking for a keynote speaker, and like he said, 3 months back, we had already contacted him, Jerry did the job. We had tossed many names, and we would start finding some flaw with each of the names that would come up. Somebody would say, no, this guy is X and Y, and so has done ABC. And then we all finally got onto this name and said, this guy looks like, for our theme, doing the right thing. And we went onto his website and we got all the details, and we all agreed this is the person who is going to give us the keynote address. We didn't look for a Jesuit alumni, but what a pleasant surprise. He's a Jesuit alumni. I mean, that was great, and we got to know of it when he arrived here, and we were, chatting up with him, and we got this piece of information. So he has seen what we want to do, and in terms of presenting the keynote, the Go Social, I think the concept that we had of going social, like Father mentioned about the Jholawala, we know that the going social can be done by people like us. I mean, he's just like us. I mean, that's the first thing that got into my mind when I was hearing him speaking and his experiences from the US and then coming back to India. He's just like one of us. And if he can do it, then why not us? I mean, that was the most inspiring part of this keynote, and we really thank you for generating that inspiration with us. The other thing I noticed is he's seen this unconference style that we talked about in our Congress. Unconference, unconventional. We have been to so many congresses where we have someone standing on the podium and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and it goes on for an hour, 2, and then another one comes, and then another hour. But here you have him picking up the unconference style and getting you to participate. I mean, that was brilliant. And how we got all of them to come in and with various ideas flowing in. And so we know that they are all living this, and they're all here to want to take this agenda forward. And we had very fair representation of Pune and Anand and Surat and Bandra and Bombay. It was great, it was wonderful. And this is what you have generated in us. You have in this keynote actually put together what we want to do the whole 1 day and this 1.5 day. We can't thank you enough, but we're very, very happy to have you with us, and we greatly appreciate what you've done for us in setting the agenda for this Congress. Once again, let's hear for Mr. Ramesh Ramanathan. Thank you very much, sir.
We'd now like to invite Kalyani and Suchita to present a memento to Mr. Ramanathan. It's just a small memento, and thank you for being here with us. Okay, thank you very much, dignitaries on the dais. You can now take